Bryce.
What have we done? What have we triggered in you?
The state government of Victoria. What do I say about this party? They're broke, so they're desperate for revenue. And so this task force is not only, and they're anti-property investor, right? Because they're socialist democracy that they're trying to create down here. There's a problem that, yes, we've got this. And so, look, here is the point. Attention all landlords in Victoria. If you're not providing safe and quiet enjoyment for your tenant, do so. Safe and quiet enjoyment means making sure that your minimum standards and your property is in good lettable order and your tenants are enjoying the experience of having safe and quiet enjoyment in that asset. However, Bryce, we have this vacant land tax, and we have, which, we've talked about before, vacant land tax doesn't just mean a tax on vacant land. It means a tax on properties that are remaining unlet. And so they're coming after us right across Victoria. They're coming after all of our holiday homes, everything else. And they've got all these rules, and they've got these task force that their one job is to raise money for the government because the government is broke, right? And they use the political spin, saying that it's to help, with the rental or housing crisis of rental supply. And if you're not going to rent it out, then let somebody else live in it, like a good socialist, state would say. It doesn't matter if you own it, you've bought it, and you're right for ownership. Don't worry about that in Victoria. This is basically part of this new task force that is anti-property investors. So this is what's going to happen whilst this government still remains in power. So it is a serious thing. And to that point, speak to your property manager about making sure that your property is compliant. Right? Now, it's interesting, Bryce, isn't it, that there are potentially businesses now that have started up, compliance businesses that have started up, seen an opportunity here and potentially can go out and do a compliance audit on your property. Another cost to the small business private rental accommodation owner in Victoria to see whether this is happening. Now, my thoughts initially, Bryce, would be, wouldn't my property manager know the rules? I'm paying them to sort of get a sense of what the rules are. So when they're doing their 6-monthly inspections, I would hope that if there is any concern, that they might flag that to me for further investigation. So I've got 2 things to say here. Property managers, please, as you're going out and doing those inspections, just make sure that you're doing the job that the owner of the property is asking you to do in the fees that you charge us. And then second, if not, please let us know and we will make sure we rectify any issues in that property. That's the finish of my rant, Bryce.
Oh, I like it, Ben. All right. Well, okay, a couple of things. Largely, since the Residential Tenancies Act reforms in 2021, these minimum standards were largely self-policed, right? But what this is actually showing is now there's a shift from passive to active enforcement. So that's the bit that we've got to put our mind to and go, okay, if there's active enforcement, what can we do? Well, if you've now got a spot where a tenant can dob you in, it's more important than ever that you actually do get this right. So I think Ben summarised that beautifully. You should be putting the pressure onto your property manager to do this. Now, I understand why a property manager would do that, because they go, all right, well, we don't want to be seen to be
because they've got
here that
they can be fined as well, right? Yeah.
But so here's the summary, right? That you can get someone to go and do it. To Ben's point, it's adding another layer of cost. But so if you do nothing, though, you face enforcement action, fines, and orders to rectify, right? So here's the summary. Don't ignore it. Compliance isn't optional, right? You've got to work with your property manager to get through the checklist and fix any of the gaps. And if your property isn't up to standard, if it's not up to standard, fix it. But if it is up to standard, you've got nothing to fear. But here's the important point for you, Amber. The audit that they've suggested is not compulsory. It's not. It's just whether or not where do you sit in your risk averse scale and where do you sit on the service levels from your property manager. Because at the end of the day, if you're not compliant, they're coming for you. They're not coming for the property manager. They're not coming for the tenant. So you just got to do whatever you got to do to underpin those minimum standards, and hopefully you've got a good working relationship with your property manager.
It is a classic example of what regulation does in a lot of respects. So because the property manager is also on the hook under this new legislation, the property manager is, with their rightful means, are basically saying, hey, we're letting you know, number one, we're giving also the option for you to do something about it in terms of getting it audited. And so in the event that these inspectors come back and look at what we've done as the property managers, we're squeaky clean, right? Now, obviously, we run a financial services business across Australia. We have lots of obligations and compliance and regulations, but we also do something similar in respect of, if you're getting yourself into debt, taking out a mortgage and you've got a family behind you, then we do ask you about what sort of protections do you have in the event that, you get injured or get sick. And so it's a duty of care in terms of asking you, are you okay with that? And so ultimately, what we don't want to have is our customers coming back to us and saying, you never told us about that. We're going to blame you for the fact that we're struggling with our mortgage or whatever that may look like. So we can understand that sort of through regulation, everyone starts to sort of protect their own butts and all of these other types of things. I mean, that's the flow-on effect of what regulation here is. But I still come back to the start of the question: safe and quiet enjoyment, making sure that your property manager knows what the regulation is and asking them to ensure, based off their knowledge, how you are in terms of those regulations. They just don't want the pushback in the event that they get it wrong. So hence a business opportunity and compliance comes up again. And now we've got these proactive opportunities for you to get that audit. And in some respects, they're guaranteeing those audits. So they're sort of putting themselves on the hook in terms of saying that we've done the inspection. And so even in, a private inspection. So if the government inspector comes and says, we don't think you're compliant, you can obviously lean on that, the private inspector to rectify the situation because you thought you were compliant. And I think most regulators take a common sense approach initially, which is a warning or a means by which you can rectify that in a certain period of time without any risk of fines in it. But if you're a slumlord and you're a scumbag landlord and everything's about you making as much money as possible, then you deserve to be prosecuted as part of that, because we don't want you as landlords. I mean, you give us a bad name in terms of how you're looking after your clients in your property and running your small private rental accommodation business. So I think that's an important message here as well, that through the self-management, we haven't been able to get the balance right as far as the socialist government's concerned. So they're coming in here to basically, again, regulate the crap out of the industry to allow that to happen.
Well, tell us what you really think. Thank you.